Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. I am absolutely so excited to be releasing this episode about the Kambo frog. It is one of the topics that I'm absolutely most passionate about. And so we're breaking this down into a 3-part series. And I'm doing this with my husband because we just got off the plane a few days ago and we had the most beautiful experience meeting the frog and doing a Kambo Daita for 5 days in the jungle. So in the first part of the series, we talk about what that was like dieting the frog and what that actually means, how we are finding that it's really important to mix the Western and the Indigenous practices together. I was trained by Tribal Detox, which is one of the most comprehensive combo trainings in the world, and it was absolutely incredible. And then I went to Peru and I was trained by an indigenous man in the jungle and did a 5-day Kambo Doite. So I'm mixing those worlds and I have so much to share about that. The second series that we do, we deep dive into the different methods of taking Kambo. You can do it wet, you can do it dry, you can scrape the medicine dry and put it on the body. Then we talk about doing pressure points. We talk about how surrender is so important and the physical, emotional, mental benefits of Kambo. All of these episodes are packed full of juicy information. I'm so excited to be sharing this with you all. And the last episode is about the medical considerations, the contraindications, and the science of Kambo. I'm bringing my husband on for that one. He's the expert in this area. He has such a nice way of explaining this in a way that everyone can digest. And so I hope that you'll enjoy this 3-part episode. And I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you'll enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hello, Adam Yazbek. Welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you. So for anybody that doesn't know, Adam's my husband. And today we're going to be talking about the Kambo frog. And the reason that we're doing this together is because we're fresh off the plane from Peru, where we just went and dieted the frog, which I know that sounds weird. We can talk a little bit about what that means. But we dieted the frog for 5 days. For those that don't know a little bit about my background, I did a 10-day combo training with Tribal Detox, which is I think one of the best programs in the United States, maybe like in a lot of the countries, but it's super comprehensive. And I really got so much value from that experience and learned so much. But then we just went to the jungle we were in Peru for 3 weeks, but we went to the jungle for a week and did another Kambo training with indigenous people in the Iquitos, where the frog lives, and learned some other things. And so we're combining our knowledge of these two experiences for this podcast. So I'm excited to get you and your perspective and for you to interview me so that we can have a conversation about this amazing little creature and all that it has to offer the world.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So you might hear us saying Kambo and combo.
Combo.
Kambo is really how they say it in Peru. In America, it might be called Kambo. We might go back and forth. I'm trying to unlearn Kambo and go back to Kambo, which I think is kind of the correct way to pronounce it. But we're going to be talking about this little frog, and it lives in the Amazon, and it lives above the water. And so that's the Amazon basin in Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Venezuela. And when they say it lives in the Amazon basin, it lives in the Amazon basin. And the little creature is hanging out really chill in these trees, literally right over the water. And I didn't realize they actually are sitting above the water. They're not hanging out in the trees away from the water or even near the water. They're above the water. And so I want to talk about our experience of going and getting these frogs and capturing them and getting their medicine, because I think before I realized the beautiful power of this medicine, and it was so important to me. And, we get the sticks and we use the medicine. But once you've gone to the jungle and seen how this medicine is extracted and the process and how incredibly complicated it is and how time consuming it is, I think it creates like a deeper appreciation for this medicine. And so let's talk about, like, I'm curious. For me, one of the reasons I wanted to go to Peru was to meet the frog and make sure that it was being treated in an ethical way and that it wasn't being harmed in the process. And that kind of like we were getting this blessing from the frog that it's okay to use its medicine. And so I'm curious what your perspective was going into this, because I know when I came back from my training, I served you a lot of Kambo. You had some pretty profound experiences and you jumped really quickly on that excitement train with me. And so what were some of the things that you were seeking when you went to Peru and we went together?
Yeah, I mean, I think this all started for me after you did the 3x3 with me. You came back from your training and you said, I'm going to do a 3x3 with you, which
So tell
for
people
people
what
who,
3x3
yeah,
is,
so for
because they might
people
not.
who don't know, yeah, the 3x3, it's kind of an invention of a Western group of people who've been training practitioners in Kambo. It's not like a traditional Matsi tribe or indigenous practice, but a 3x3 is what they call like a warrior initiation. Essentially, you do 3 seatings of Kambo back to back. So you put the Kambo medicine on, you burn however many spots you're going to do, your points. I think I started with 5, and then I sat with that for 20 minutes, was off for 40 minutes, went back in for a second session with 2 more points.
But
So
you
went to
added,
7.
so we took all the 5
Yeah.
off and then we put 7 fresh ones on. Yes.
Yep, 7 fresh ones on. 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off, burned. We had 2 more points that were already open, and then we did 9 for the last sit. So we did 5, 7, and 9 back-to-back sessions, which was really intense. I had a really big, beautiful, profound 3x3, similar to how you've described your 3x3 experience. It was like really meeting the frog and understanding what the medicine is about, what it's there for, and how to kind of work with the frog. There's a lot of surrendering, and there's also a lot of beauty in it. There's a lot of softness and a lot of release that comes as you go deeper into the medicine. So kind of the way I've described my 3x3 is the first session is a lot of the body stuff that you feel when you sit with Kambo, a lot of the like stomach ache, the low blood pressure, you get like warm all over and flushed all over. You get heart races. Your blood pressure kind of drops a little bit. You get a really big, intense physical experience. And that was my first round. The second round was this like really deep meditation. I felt really calm on the inside, really at peace. It was a really beautiful experience. It just felt like a really deep, really intense meditation where there was just a lot of calm and stillness inside. And then my third round of my 3x3, I went off into like a full like shamanic journey. Like I had visions of the frog in the jungle, and I heard the frog making noise around me, and I was like stalking it in the forest, and I got this very clear calling that we had to go to the jungle and meet the Kambo frog. And so we'd already been talking about going to Peru, and after that experience, I was like, we're going to go to Peru, and we're going to meet the Kambo frog. We're going to work with it. I'm going to get trained in how to do Kambo as well.
Yeah.
And I want to have that experience, and I want to meet the frog and learn how to work with it. Not to just, be a practitioner solely, but also just personally to have that relationship with it. So that was sort of the initial sort of steps that we kind of took to make this decision. And then when we got to Peru, it was really amazing. I don't know if you want to share your reaction to meeting the frog for the first time.
Well, I kind of want to touch on the 3x3 too, because I think that it is not something that the indigenous people do. It is a Western creation. And I actually think it's a beautiful Western creation. For people that dismiss it, because even where we were, the person that was running that center kind of dismissed it. And when I started talking about it, he's like, oh, maybe I should try it. So it's easy to dismiss something because it's been created by the Western world. But I have to say, like, my 3x3 experience, all of us in the training, your 3x3, and all the people I've served since in the 3x3 experience, It's extremely profound. I think it's one of the most profound experiences I've ever had with medicine my entire life. And yes, it is warrior medicine. People think it's crazy to do the 3x3 because the Kambo session is so incredibly difficult. And it is, that first round is like a normal difficult combo session. The second round can be really difficult too. A lot of people struggle. The whole 3x3 experience is incredibly exhausting. By the end, people are just completely tapped out the rest of the day, but you're flooding your body with all of these peptides. It is a very spiritual experience. It is a way to build and develop a relationship with a frog. I don't know how you could not, because it's just so profound. And I mean, it's not something that I would need people are going to do often. Maybe you do it every 5 years. I would like to do it every year. It's extremely profound. And so you are adding those 2 dots every single time. And it sounds like a lot, but it does get easier and easier as the rounds go on. It is a powerful experience. It is an exhausting experience. And it's like anything, I think, with life, like you just have to kind of walk through the difficult part to get through to the light. And so I do want to touch a little bit on that before moving on, because I think sometimes we think the indigenous people do it a certain way and that has to be done that way, and we can't as Westerners like mix. And I think that there's benefits to both. And as I've gone through the training in the Western world, and as I've gone and I've stepped into the indigenous world, I would like to take pieces that work for me of both of those worlds and combine them in a way that makes sense to me, because there are things that I'm going to disregard from my Western training too. And so going to the jungle, that was the most exciting part of the trip to Peru for me. When I was going, was like, let's go and meet this frog. And again, I wanted to make sure that the ethical treatment of it was paramount for me in going there. And so what I quite wasn't prepared for is, in my brain, like when I had gone through my training, and I talked about this with you before we left, that with Jason Fellows and Tribal Detox, they leave the medicine on for 20 minutes and then they wipe it off after 20 minutes with the idea that the peptides take 20 minutes to enter the body, and that's why we're doing that experience. And I kept saying, in my mind, I'm like watching the clock and I'm like, oh my God, it's the 20 minutes. Is the 20 minutes up? Okay, I'm at 18 minutes. I'm good. I got 2 more minutes. And almost always, once the medicine is wiped off, I'm like, just start vomiting, or I'm still vomiting and I'm still in that experience. And I was terrified that when we went to the jungle, that there would be no end and no time and nobody keeping time. And I was also terrified that instead of getting the medicine off of the stick, now we're going to get the medicine off of the frog directly onto our body, and how incredibly intense that was. And I also found that for me, like everyone has their right amount of medicine. And for me, I felt like it was 3 gates, which is those 3 spots that you burn and you put the medicine in. And I was like, that's my number, 3. 3 is my good number. And so the first day when we went in, and you handle more medicine than me, usually go with like 4 or 5, the Cambocero said, 4, do 4, the fresh combo. And I'm like, 4, you mean 3? And he said, 4. And I'm like,
Quattro.
but 3. And he's like, 4. And I'm thinking, and he told us both 4. And he said that the medicine fresh off the frog was double potency of the normal. So I was kind of freaking out, because in my head, I'm like 3. And then also there's no time limit. You just leave the medicine on. And so I was having a little mini heart attack before we even went into it. And I'll talk about my experience with the fresh combo, and then I'd love for you to share yours. I think we had a different experience. And for me, again, I was terrified, like 3 is my sweet spot, and now we're doing 4 and it's double potency. He wanted them on my neck, and I was taught in my training not to do them on the spine, and there were some spinal points for me. And I had spinal points before in my first combo session, and it was really, 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 really intense. So I was a little nervous, but I was trusting that this guy knew what he was doing, because he's been serving this medicine for a really long time and he has this deep connection, and that's why we were there. And so I would say, and we were serving each other, and I think you served me and then I had to serve you. And I was like, the medicine hits hard, like within, I don't know, 15, 30 seconds. And so I'm like starting to feel the medicine and I'm trying to like get your medicine on. It was so fast and it was so intense and I can't sit up. I can't sit up when I take the medicine. And so, I was laying on the mat and all I remember is like my body got so hot. It was like on fire and like my sweat was sweating. I was sweating. I couldn't have been sweating more. I was just like my legs, my arms, my face, my back, like my whole body was just sweating profusely. And as this is happening, my heart's pounding and I'm like, I've learned to surrender to this frog. This is the one thing that this frog has taught me is to surrender. So I did. I was able to surrender. And I found, besides that period of time where I was just sweating, that there was somewhat of an ease to it for me. And I tend to always vomit in Kambo, and I didn't. I was really worried about like this might be too TMI, but I tend to bottom purge too. I tend to purge out of everything, right? And I tend to bottom purge. And I was like, are they going to serve this in the jungle where there's no toilets? And like, this is my big fear, right? I went and got compostable wipes to take it to the jungle before we left. But there was a bathroom, but sometimes when you're on the medicine, you can barely walk. There was a bathroom there, which is, a bathroom, which is like a bucket, a bucket with like shavings of wood. But I got through the whole experience. And then at the very end, I went and visited the bucket and like purged the lower end. So I didn't actually even vomit, which I was really surprised. But I found the experience wasn't double difficult for me. I did think it was difficult, but for some reason, there was a lot of trust and surrender. And I found ease in that experience. And I was really shocked because it was 4 points. It was on the spine. It was fresh off the frog. And I did. I just trusted. I surrendered. I found ease. And I didn't suffer as much as I expected or as much as I normally do. And so it was only uphill from there, right? Because that was, 4 points in the spine from the frog's back. And so I kind of felt like, all right, if I can handle this, I can handle this experience in the jungle. And for us, when they said we were dieting the frog, so we went specifically to this program to work with the frog. And so we were like dieting the frog. And so what that meant was no salt, no sugar, and no touching. So you and I shared a cabin, but I was upstairs, you were downstairs. We couldn't touch, we couldn't hug any of the other participants or shake hands. And so all of our attention, all of our focus, and all of our energy was going into this frog. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but there is something profound about doing the daita, which is what they call it. So we'll go into that in a little while, but I would love for you to share your experience with 4 dots fresh off the little froggy's back.
Yeah. Real quick, I think it's interesting. We discussed this a lot before we went about how the medicine might be different in the jungle than how you learned it and how we've been practicing it here in the States. And you were like, I don't think they have a timer. I think they just leave it on. I'm like, so what? They leave it on. It's okay. It's like, well, I don't want to be forced to drink too much water. I'm like, well, just drink as much water as you want. She's like, well, I'm only going to drink this much water. There's all this rigidity and rules that we had built around this medicine. And not that they were wrong, because there's a lot of safety things that you have to account for. And there's a lot of considerations that are part of using any kind of medicine respectfully and safely. But we did go there to kind of just surrender to this experience and to be open to what it was going to be. And I think both of us, after doing this experience, have found we're going to call it the jungle method of leaving the medicine on to it run its full course is actually maybe more in alignment with the medicine itself. And maybe is more of an authentic experience that speaks more to the other factors of working with Kambo, not just for the peptides, not reducing the medicine just to the chemical properties of it, but really the experience of sitting with Kambo and what that whole experience has to offer. I found my 4 dots to be very strong. I'm trying to remember where I had them, but I don't know if you put them on my back or my arm. I don't remember now.
I think I put them on your back.
We got a lot of points while we were there. So I'm on my back, my shoulders, my neck, my lower back, everywhere. but they were very strong. And when we say straight off the frog, I mean, the frog was tied to a little tree branch, and they were coming with a little wooden spatula, the little tool that they make of wood, which we can talk about too. And they actually kind of press on where the glands are on the frog, and as it secretes the Kambo medicine, the secretions of the Phyllomedusa Bicolor frog, it's like this milky white gooey substance, and literally you just like drop it on the dots. And the Matsis, they like will burn like 30 dots in a row on their arm, and they'll just take it and they'll just slap it on and spread it all on. There's hardcore like that. So it came on very quickly. You wouldn't like reconstitute it with the tool. So even though you were like in the medicine, it was like dot 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 dot. Okay, let's go into it now. I found it to be much faster acting than when you reconstitute with the stick, because there isn't this. I feel like when it's dry and you have to reconstitute it, there's something about the water and sort of the like liquid from the lymph from the skin itself that makes contact with the medicine. It has to be absorbed into the lymphatic system and then into the bloodstream. Because it was already liquid, it literally just went like right in, it like sucked it right in. And so very quickly, about, I would say maybe 30 seconds in, I felt the flush, the heartbeat, got really like kind of lightheaded. And normally when I sit with Kambo, I sit up. I'm able to kind of maintain like a meditative pose and kind of really just be present with the medicine. And even though it can be intense and I get stomach pains and I get all the like bodily sensations, sometimes I get a little like stiff in my extremities and I can't move very well. I was suffering. I was like full on in surrender and submission to the frog. I had to like go into a fetal position, and I also never vomit. And immediately, like I had the purge, and it was like intense, and there was a lot of it, but it was mostly just water. We can go into the purge stuff too, in a minute. But a ton of just like water and clear stuff came up, which is what they were aiming for. They wanted me to purge. They wanted us all to purge our first time. And then, you know, when I've sat with Kambo before, I've asked you not to tell me the time. Like, I don't want to know how much time I have left. I don't want to know
where I'm like,
that
what time is it?
I don't want to know that I have 5 minutes left to pedal. Yeah. I don't know that it's like you get these flu-like symptoms that feel really intense. And there's something about not knowing the time that makes it, for me, easier. I just keep more present with it. And so I had the sense that it was lasting a long time. I think I probably was in the medicine for about 40 minutes, which
yours always lasts longer than mine.
Yeah, I'm really sensitive, I found, to most medicine. And so I would say like the unpleasantness, probably the peak of it was around like the 15, 20-minute mark, if I had to guess. But then there was this like fairly quick subsiding of the medicine. And even though I was still in it, and I was like basically in a fetal position on the ground and couldn't really move and couldn't really talk or interact with anybody, there was this sort of like calmness in it as well. There was a little bit of what I've spoke to about the 3x3, where there's a little bit more of the subtlety of the medicine that comes through. And so it wasn't about just like removing it and getting me out of it, the experience, and then like having those feelings subside because the medicine's been removed, but it was sort of this natural kind of like bell curve to the experience that felt very, I don't know, it just felt very in alignment with what the medicine was wanting to work with me. And there wasn't this like fighting it. There was just sort of this surrender to it and acceptance and kind of opening myself up to receiving what the medicine was there to do for me. And then we were asked to shower after.
Yeah. So, but they basically like put the medicine on, leave you alone. There's not any interaction. Nobody's talking to you. And then you just kind of figure out when the medicine's done for you. Yeah. And then they tell you to go take a shower because it dries on your body. Yeah.
So I took a shower, came back, we got our dragon's blood applied, and then we had breakfast. We did that.
Talk about dragon's blood? Wait, I want to talk about dragon's blood, because I was like, what is dragon's blood, right? It's like this woo-woo, like, thing that they bottle up to put on it, and it works really well. And I knew it was an antibacterial, antimicrobial, but actually we saw the tree. They go and they slash the tree. It bleeds out this like red medicine.
It's sap.
Yeah, and we put that on, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's really cool how it just comes straight from the tree, and that's how we applied it. It didn't come in a bottle. It wasn't like pre-wrapped and packaged. It was like literally the sap from the tree
Yeah.
that they cut with a knife. That was a really cool experience too. And so we did that every day that we were there. Not always with fresh, but we did Kambo every day in the morning before we ate. We came fasted. I think we stopped eating usually around 2:30, 3 o'clock most days, and then did Kambo early in the morning, like 7 a.m. is usually
But
when
we'd
we
always
started.
go to the kitchen and get like a banana or some fruit or something at night. Yeah.
But yeah, we came fasted, which is a practice that you were taught in your Western training as well. But I think we can talk about like you shouldn't fast more than, was it 16 to 18 hours max?
So in my Kambo training, they were saying you need to be minimum fasted of 7 hours. It's like more is better. And that's with, you want to avoid high protein, high fat foods. So that's if you're really avoiding all of those high protein, high fat foods. 7 hours is probably closer to 8 to 12 would be safe. And then you don't want to be fasted more than 18 hours. So typically in our training there and in the Western training, you have a normal dinner, you go to bed, you wake up, you don't eat or drink anything in the morning, and then you come fasted of food and water. I know in the US, a lot of people are doing Kambo in the evening. So they ask people to fast. We were taught if you are going to have fluids that you have 1 cup per hour, and then you stop 2 hours before you come in for Kambo. And it's like, that's the water is the most important thing. If anybody hears anything about this entire podcast, water is the most important thing. You don't want to drink more than a liter and a half. Some of the programs are pushing a ton of water. Less is better. You can go with no water, which we can talk about in a little while. But if you read anything about any of the dangers of anything happening, if you Google Kambo and then you see something bad has happened, it is due to people not disclosing medications, because there are certain medications that are contraindicated, or the water. The water is essential, that you don't drink too much water. It is
Yeah.
absolutely the most important piece.
Yeah, so one of the things that we found out, this was covered in our training in the jungle actually, was that some of the peptides, and we'll do like a whole podcast on the medical pieces of Kambo, which is really fascinating. But one of the things is that it increases ADH, antidiuretic hormone production in the body, which what that does is it reserves water in the kidneys. And so what ends up happening is your blood gets kind of over diluted, if you think of that way. And so if you're drinking tons of water and your body's already retaining more water, it can cause your sodium levels to drop. And so hyponatremia can lead to seizures, cerebral edema, brain swelling. And that's what can cause these really serious health events, is too much water, especially in the setting of being dehydrated. So a lot of people will combine Kambo with ayahuasca retreats. And so they're maybe vomiting a lot and they're already kind of depleted from their electrolyte standpoint. And then they drink all this water to purge with the Kambo, and they get too diluted in their blood and their sodium levels become too low. And that's when things get really dangerous. So yes, the water is super key. Absolutely.
So let's talk about the purge, because I've learned different things in the different trainings. And now I'm starting to kind of like understand things in a different way. So there's some trainings that push the purge, and they push it hard, and they make you drink like a gallon of water. Again, that water thing is the most important thing, not to drink more than a liter, maybe a liter and a half at the max. But a liter is all I would say is safe. A liter or less of water. And so in my training, we were taught like it doesn't matter. The purge isn't important. People purge in different ways. So some people cry, some people vomit, some people have diarrhea. Like it can look a bunch of different ways. And I've served a lot of people who don't purge at all. And so when I went to the jungle, when we went there, they talked a lot about the purge, and the purge is actually really important. And so there's, in my training, we're taught like Kambo isn't about detoxing, but there is an element of, we are ridding our body of all the things that aren't serving us. So yes, there is this component of releasing, of getting rid of things that don't serve us. It could be anger, it could be all like medications, it could be whatever that we need to release and get out of our system. It could be tears, it could be sadness. And then so there's like are we detoxing? Are we not detoxing? Because there's that element of purging and getting rid of, and then there's that element of we want to bring in all these peptides. That's why we're taking it. We're taking it for all of these peptides. And I think in the jungle and with the indigenous, there's both, right? we're taking in these peptides, we're giving our body everything that it needs, but there is this important element of purging. And so a lot of people where we were at this retreat were doing other medicines, and they wanted us to come in and cleanse our bodies of medications, cleanse our bodies of anger, cleanse our body of like excess sugar, like whatever that is. And so the purge was important. When you and I went, your purge was mostly clear. My purge was a bottom purge. They were really happy with the way that we purged. And so they gave us kind of less medicine as the week went on. For people that were purging out, who weren't purging, they did kind of push the purge, or if they were purging out bile and like bright yellow, they would give them more Kambo. And so they looked at the quality of the purge and the color of the purge in order to determine where and how to serve the medicine next. In my training with Tribal Detox, they were saying like we don't analyze the purge. And it's true, we're not doctors. Our job is to serve the medicine and not to like make all these interpretations. But in serving the medicine, we want to know like how to serve and how to best serve and how much to serve and like what path we're going to take with this medicine. I think the difference in the Western world and the Indigenous world is, in the Western world, people come and they get like one serving every month or every 2 months or every 3 months. So they're coming in with a bunch of crap that they need to remove out of their system. Where in the jungle, you're there and you're getting the medicine for maybe 5 days or maybe 2 weeks, or like there's a series of getting the medicine so that you go from like this dirty state and detoxing this stuff out to where you're in a more clean and clear space, I think physically, emotionally, mentally. So I'd love, because you're super science based and you have this background in medicine, I would love for your perspective on the purge, because it's very different. And I know our job is not to interpret, our job is to serve this medicine. And I do see that there are limitations in the Western world when people only come once a month, right? There's only so much that we can do with this medicine. But let's hear your perspective on the quality of the purge.
Yeah, and I think when I first heard about the idea of people analyzing your vomit to diagnose you, I thought that was a bunch of bullshit initially. And I think there's a lot of Western trainings that talk about how that's BS. There's other ones that embrace it. They'll say, oh, like people puke all kinds of crazy colors, and it means that there's unresolved family issues, or there's a problem with your mother. I mean, I think you can get really woo-woo about it. And I don't think that's based on anything either experientially or even on a scientific level. And so what I appreciated about the way we were trained in the jungle is that there was a lot of discussion about the kind of medical implications of what's coming out of your body. And that I can get behind, that I can understand. And so from my perspective, if you're drinking water right before you do the Kambo is a very powerful medicine, especially in the gastrointestinal tract. It has all of these kind of activity and increases the production of a lot of secretions in the GI system, specifically with the liver, the pancreas, and also the motility of the smooth muscle of the GI system. So there's a lot of like contracting and pumping action that's happening there. And so what should come back out is what you just put in, which is water. It should be clear. Especially if you come in fasted, there's no reason for you to vomit food. If you're fasted and there's nothing being digested, there shouldn't be a lot of bile in your GI system when all you're drinking is water and you're fasted. And so if your body is producing all this excess bile, all these excess pancreatic enzymes, and those are always present in your GI system, in your GI tract, then there's some reason that your body is producing an excess amount of these bile salts, an excess amount of these enzymes. And so I think there's something to that there is something that needs to be kind of cleaned out from your diet. And so what they would say in our training is that if the vomit that came out was yellow, there was a little bit too much bile in there. If it came out like green, bright green, like tons of bile, then there was likely something going on with your liver or even potentially your pancreas, because there's this excess production of these really intense enzymes and bile salts, because maybe your diet's has too much fat in it, or maybe you're drinking too much alcohol and you're stressing out your liver and it's working too hard. And so I do think there's something to that to look at, like, what am I doing to my body that's making it work harder than it should, that it's not working optimally, that it has to work sort of extra hard. And so there's this overproduction of these things that aren't necessarily necessary at the time. And so if that's coming up, I think that's something to look at. If your vomit has undigested food, or it's orange, it has these other colors to it, maybe there's something in your system that you're eating that isn't necessarily moving through very quickly. There's some sort of lack of gastric motility, or there's something that your body's not fully digesting. I think that's something to look at. I think it's something to spend some time understanding. And maybe there's some cleaning out of your diet that needs to be done, or maybe there's some improvement of your gastrointestinal system that needs to be done. Anytime there's red, that's usually like upper GI bleeding, which is like esophageal, or it could be like the stomach. And if it's black, a lot of times it's like a gastric or a peptic ulcer or duodenal ulcer, meaning like an area of their GI system that has like bleeding. And so those are definitely things to get medical attention for. So I do think there's something
if they vomit like coffee grounds or blood, then they need to seek medical attention.
Yeah, I think that's something to then go find a medical provider and see if you need to be treated for an ulcer, or if you have like esophageal varices, which can happen in alcoholism. Like that's definitely a very serious condition. So I think blood and black is definitely like a red flag, and that's someone you shouldn't serve Kambo to, and they should get medical advice. They should get medical testing done to see what's going on, because there could be a big problem that needs to be addressed. And so in that regard, I do think there's something to analyzing the color of the vomit. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know they say like green is bile, which is liver, which is associated with anger. And so you start getting into sort of like, what is the metaphysical meaning behind different organs of the body? And I think when people do like liver detoxes, those are really intense processes for people on like a very emotional and like deeply physical level. And so there's something to that. Coming from like a medical standpoint, I could say, oh yeah, you have too much anger. But I think there's something to this process of purging things out that aren't serving you. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was brought up in the training, which I thought was really kind of important, was the medicine will go to where it needs to work. And so often you'll find heat or a lot of sensation or maybe pain or cramping in the area of the body that is needing healing or that is needing some kind of reset. And so I don't know, you can speak to your first set with Kambo if you want as to where you were feeling that energy go. But I think that's something to pay attention to, right? Like this is medicine and it's helping heal us, and it's trying to bring our attention to the things that we need to focus on.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into tons of detail around that right now, but I think it does. I mean, that's the cool thing about it is it heals so many different systems and so many different things. And that's the magic of this medicine. And it's one of the like most magical and powerful pieces of it. And it is interesting because everyone has a completely different response and a different reaction to it. So I'd like to wrap up this podcast because we're going to go to another segment. And so let's go to another segment. I want people to tune into the next one about like the different ways to apply Kambo medicine. There's a wet method, there's a dry method, there's a dry method. And so let's go ahead and wrap this up, and we're going to go and pop on into another episode for people to tune into. Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nikkiyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.